Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Cybersecurity Market 2025 and Beyond, Trends in Security. My name is Joshua Ermeke. I'm an account manager here at PAC, and today I will be your host. First, we will get through some technical information. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and all participants will be on mute. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom. There will be a Q&A at the end, and also in case we run out of time, we can contact you afterward. You will receive the recording and the slide deck after the webinar. Now let's get to our agenda for today. Our first two speakers are our principal analyst, Wolfgang Schwab, and our senior analyst, Eric Domage. They will give you an overview of the cybersecurity markets and its drivers. Following them, our principal analyst, Spencer Izard, will dive into findings of our CxO survey to show you trends on the relationship between cybersecurity and AI. And as promised, we will have the Q&A at the end. Wolfgang, you have the stage.
Thanks a lot. Let's start with the market overview of the major markets, so France, Germany, and the UK. If we take a look at France, we already see a strong service market, and it's even growing faster, especially in the outsourcing services. They are investing huge for the next years, so the market is growing fast. But also project services are developing very good. The picture is a little bit different for Germany. In Germany, the in-house operations is still alive, so to speak. But we expect for the next years a significant growth, especially for outsourcing services, but also for project services. And this is mainly driven on one hand side by the large enterprises for sure, but also by the German Mittelstand, so the upper mid-market companies, which reach the limits for internal operations by now in two things: in talent availability and in the ability to handle the complexity, which is growing quite significantly. And the UK market is something in between. It's growing significantly in software and in services. The ratio of services is also in between of Germany and France. And the growth is not as fast as in France, especially if it comes to outsourcing services, but it's still in very good shape. The basic question is, why is that? Why is this market growing really fast despite any economical issues in the EU, in Europe, and basically worldwide? And it's basically driven by a few significant drivers. One is the need for enterprise resilience. Most larger companies had pretty bad experience during the pandemic. And the international tensions we are faced today ask for resilience on many levels. One is cyber resilience. Others are IT resilience, operational resilience, and of course, supply chain resilience. Given that fact, well, best positioned to deal with that are basically the management consultants, as they can address the full picture. And that explains why they invested a lot in their cyber abilities over the last years. So companies like KPMG or AI are pretty good positioned to play that card. If we talk about cyber resilience, we really mean more than just cybersecurity. It's basically the ability of a company to continue business even during a cyber incident. So it's not only safeguarding systems and networks, including cloud and things like that, but really making sure, even if there is an incident, the company as such can work. And this concept is pretty new. To achieve this, you have to follow more or less 4 principles. It starts with risk governance. Obviously, you have to ensure that all cybersecurity measures are effective and are in line with business strategies. That's not always the case. Risk management is needed to minimize threats on one hand side, but even more important, to limit the impact of for sure coming incidents. And you have to establish a culture basically of hyper hygiene. That's all about behavior, employee behavior, best practices, how to handle external threats. It's basically coming to to employee training, which we all know is a kind of a necessity on one hand side and never worked really on the other hand side. So we'll come to back to that. And lastly, you have to have a crisis management team in place, obviously before a crisis really occurs. And that's a mix of people all around the company. So basically all enterprise functions are represented in such a team and need to work together. Important. What does that mean for service providers? Well, basically, the whole story begins with consulting, strategy, recovery plans, response plans need to be designed, and project and managed services are the second and the third step. So you have to have consulting in place. You have to have offerings in that space. Otherwise, the topic cyber resilience is probably not for you. And as cyber security and cyber resilience is linked to IT resilience, which is linked to enterprise resilience, most decisions on who can handle such things, who can offer, or which offer will be accepted, is done on a C-level. That means the conversation is on business. You have to talk business, and it's not on technology, not in the first row. The second important driver are the involvement of internal and external threats. And here we see a little iceberg problem. There are many topics everybody sees, everybody talks about, for which we have solutions in place. Solutions are at least available, not necessarily implemented in a consistent way, but anyhow, you could solve that issues quite easily. On the other hand side, there are topics which are either unseen or just ignored. Insider threats, extremely hard to deal with. The lack of security awareness, here again, we talk about things like employee training, hard to really get a handle on it. And obviously, overprivileged access still a topic. There are solutions to handle that, but it's rarely really implemented consistently. And of course, there's still the human factor, carelessness in operations, just human errors still occur and are also relatively hard to get a handle on it. And for the other drivers, I would hand over to Eric. You're on mute.
Thank you, Wolfgang. I'm very bad in digital, so let's see what I can do regarding the cybersecurity. This is a closed loop and a closed look at the discussions about the external growth factors of the market. And that picture doesn't show a kind of black hole that is very far behind as all the black holes. When we look at the regulations coming from the European Commission, mostly from the European Commission, we see currently on the dashboards, we see NIS2 directive being transposed, like in France, not yet in Germany, not yet in the UK with a very specific transposition. It's been transposed in 9 countries, and we start to understand what's happening over there. Then the CRA, the Resilience Act, and the DORA that has been applied to the financial sector. That's what is on the windscreen at the moment. But there's a few things behind on the second level. There's a review of GDPR ongoing, so GDPR 2 might come up. At the moment where the discussions with the US-based DPF, data privacy framework, is very, very, very strange. Then there's the DNA that applies to the telcos, and there's the review of the Cybersecurity Act. The regulation flows are started in 2018 with GDPR, and guess what? It is not going to stop. The cybersecurity might be fully regulated by the government, if not yet regulated by the industry by themselves. As you know, there's many overlaps between the governmental regulations and the technical regulations by the verticals. So we have a close look all the time on the regulation stream on what's happening. We have a close look on what's happening in Brussels, but not only. And we have also a close look at what's happening in Washington to understand what are the impacts on the market. NIS2 is a kind of a grapefruit. You know, it's spring here in France, at least in some regions. And a grape develops usually by a piece of wood stick, and then you see fruits coming up. NIS2 has moved from very NIS1, in fact, basic regulation, where we had this essential entities being regulated. Then we added more grapes, more fruit with important entities. Then it's been added 18 verticals. And then by the end of the spring, we'll have these multiple small fruits, which are the small, medium-sized companies that very few people know exactly how many there are, 15,000, maybe in France, maybe more. And those people will be regulated directly by NIS2 or will be embedded into regulated ecosystems, and they will need to come to the cybersecurity level, which is quite good. It is often said that NIS2 is a replica of ISO 27000X in Europe. It's the aim of NIS2 is to up the level of cybersecurity. The question regarding the SMEs and their capacity to invest is very, very hard. We see in Belgium that there's many questions. Belgium has transposed the law. We see in Romania that there are many, many, many questions. So how could we bring those companies to the right level of security, considering that they spend 50k euro per year on IT and that the budget to catch up is just crazy. Well, not crazy, but important. So we see a lot of public funding coming up. And that's a question that has not been in the mind of the regulators when they did the text. And it's something that is critical at the moment, where there's some discussions on investments. So NIS2, we stress the high end of the market. It stressed the mid and low level. And we have many, many concerns by the SMEs unions on how to be regulated and face the compliance with where are the budgets. DORA applies to the usual suspects, which are the financials. They are used to regulation, even if it's very, very, very expensive. And CRA will apply to industrials that know. So NIS2 has a very strong effect once it's transposed on any of the local markets, and it's mostly on the SME level. When we looked at what the impacts, the first impact on the market, it's governance. As you know, the first pillar of NIS2 is create a security governance, a security watch over, a security reporting, a security exchange. So first element is governance sector with GRC, CM, and SOC, and governance tools, and not tools and services. The second is on IAM. Usually IAM is impacted by regulation. So encryption, very strong encryption for GDPR. Here we see MFA, multi-factor authentication, that is happening. We see that an application with encryption and cryptography. And we see, of course, the very basic IGN security, which is the perimeter security, the endpoint security. With NIS2, firewall is not enough anymore. Endpoint virus detection is not enough anymore. You need to go to the next step. And we have the very big structural and architectural discussion on zero and ZTNA regulation. So the impact of NIS2 on the market growth is on all the 4 sectors that PAC is analyzing. That's quite interesting to see how it works. Another point on the on the European market, there's three mega trends. We have currently a report that should be published within a few weeks regarding the mega trends on the security market. First, it's the continuous growth. If you remember what is happening on the tech markets, usually there's a adoption, massification, and change. Regarding cybersecurity, we're still at the upper level curve. And so we believe that the market pace in Europe will stay around 10% globally growth rate year on year until 2029. And we do not see why the growth should reduce. That's element number one, continuous market growth. And number two is the cyber intensity growing. If we compare the market growth and the market volumes on cybersecurity with what we call the CxC, it's the back way to look at the IT market spending. The ratio has moved from 6 to 8%. So the cyber intensity is coming, and we guess it will go up to 10% by 2029. So by 2029, the ratio of cyber intensity will have doubled from starting in 2014. That is quite interesting, around 10%. And the last element is a move to SaaS, which is security as a service. Outsourced and managed security solutions are very visible because they reduce complexity. They what we call OPEXify security. There's no more CapEx anymore. That's much easier for the SME, those we've seen on the past having to adopt an IS2 into this space. However, Wolfgang made a very clear point that there is no outsourcing without consulting project. It's what we call consultative sales on cybersecurity. So there is a very close link in project and consulting increase and SaaS increase. And then be careful, it doesn't mean that the software is not dead. We see many, many cases where the major accounts are still buying licenses from the editors and having those licensing serviced by the MSSPs, managed security service providers. For one main reason is that if you have a one-year license agreement, you can renew it much easier than when you do that on a multi-year service contract agreement. So software is not dead, and many big, I would say, cybersecurity editors still have the two legs, license business and service business. So those are the three mega trends that you will find back on the CxC in 2 to 3 weeks. The report is currently under proofreading. A little French example, and that is the guess point. So everything that is said here is a pure guess. And if we look at the French market regarding what is happening, Orange Cyber Defense has published this report recently, and they made a 50% increase on the SME market, on the very specific SME market with two offerings, Mini-SOC and My Cybersecurity. And those are 100% pure MSSP offerings. So these people have raided the market, and it's very impressive. Finance is not impressive, but the volumes are impressive. Many markets on the top 10 PAC security service intends to go to the SMEs. It's the gold rush. It's a volume market, slow margins, but a lot of sales, which is quite interesting. And we're in France with a very specific area of mid-caps MSSPs, eye tracing, NeverHack, Ejiri, Advance, Intrinsic, name it. We've got 10 to 15 people, which are now funded by the VCs, Tikeo, Carlyle, Eurozero, Clay Capital, and whatever. And those VCs are very close to the final 5 years deadline. They come into these companies for 5 years, and after 5 years, they try to do what they're here for, which is sell and take the benefit. And so we've got many situations where the VCs and the funders are very close to this 5 years deadline. So we believe that there is a consolidation ahead of us. 3 scenarios of consolidation. Cross-border expansions and consolidation. We've seen that eye tracing has done an acquisition in the UK 3 weeks ago with Broadwell. I think that's Broadwell in the UK. So that's a cross-border consolidation. Eye tracing is going to UK. NeverHack is being to Italy. Advance is going to Spain on its own. So we'll see a lot of expansions to the neighboring countries. NeverHack in Italy, eye tracing in UK, Advance in Spain. But we still believe that those people may or are already considering merging each other's. Their funders and their VCs may be very active into it. So that's horizontal consolidations. Or maybe we've got someone from outside that will buy everything, we don't know. But the fact is that staying a mid caps is not good for the business, because there's really there's a need to get bigger and face the big players in cybersecurity services in French, Capgemini, Thales, Soprasteria, name them. And to face those people, you need to go at a bigger scale. And so that's a scaling effect. So consolidations may be driven by the need to scale up and face a better competition. And now I think I'm Mo, and I'm handing over to Spencer.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Spencer Izard. I'm a principal analyst here at PAC. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is some security perspective survey results that we did a few months back when engaging organizations around AI. If I just frame the survey for you, it was 550 plus. It was actually quite over that in the end. Senior level and CxO level respondents across Europe, 5 countries, 3 regions, and across 10 industries. The survey predominantly covered data in the context of AI, responsible AI, explainable AI, and generative AI. But importantly for today, it also had a section in there that covered specifically security, and it covered security in the sense of how it should be applied to secure AI, but also how AI should be considered coming into security practices and functions. Before we get into the detail around the security specific stuff, I just wanted to give everybody a quick overview of where European leaders saw their AI adoption and how they're investing in it over the next 2 years, just to give you some context in regards to the things that Wolfgang and Eric have been raising earlier as trends. So 20% of respondents said they're in that research and experimentation phase, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the other slides, where sometimes organizations get stuck in that and need to move through to the next value level. But healthily, 23% were in pilots, and and that's where we see a lot of movement at the moment, and where a lot of service providers can help in the pilots and then translating that into business outcomes. And then finally, 27% were scaling across use cases. I want to highlight here that's not scaling end-to-end across an enterprise, that's scaling within a specific use case. So in this context, there's a couple of examples. That would be customer service type functions in a business, or excuse me, or marketing functions. If we look now from a finance perspective over 2 years, from a budget perspective, sorry, 39% of respondents said they're going to increase their AI-related budget by up to 25%. 34% said between 26 and 50, and an exuberant 23% were going to do between 51 and 100. Part of the reason why putting this data point on this slide is, we do obviously understand that AI is the big sort of trend in the last few years, but it's also good to see that from our respondents that there's a healthy continued investment despite some of the challenges that organizations are having to navigate. So if we move now into the security specific questions, so we asked how much of a priority is adapting cybersecurity to securing AI. Only 18%, which is a good thing, said it's a moderate priority as AI adoption increases. A much more healthy 41% said it's a high priority with executive support. And this is very reassuring to myself, the team, and all of us at PAC, because I think, I can say this from my sort of few decades of career now, that sometimes security tends to come at the end of the conversation rather than at the start of the conversation when designing a strategy, deciding on business outcomes, getting a governance model in place. So, with AI more than ever, a data strategy and a security strategy are integral up front to get that value out. And then finally, for this slide, 34% had it as a top priority and a strategic focus. So good that seeing leadership at that senior level, understand where it needs to be, applied. Moving on, we asked, how will your organization develop secure and trustworthy AI? So at fourth, respondents said, 32% said implementing AI security testing and validation tools, which I think we'd all expect to see on some kind of response like this. Tools is often the go-to sort of thought process for a lot of security. Where it starts to get very interesting to show that the understanding of the AI challenge is broader than just a tool set is is respondents saying, look, from a security perspective, we also need to be investing in explainable AI and interpretability. So here we need to understand that being able to be transparent and understanding of how AI has come to this conclusion, whether it's helping security or helping to protect AI, or security is helping to protect AI, is an integral part. And that's not necessarily a tools-based conversation, even though there's technology involved in that. That's as much of a process structure as well. Number two is establishing AI ethics and governance processes. And you'll see this is a theme through the next few slides as well. This is where the responsible AI conversation comes into place, where security is as much about the ethics guidelines, having clear governance processes to ensure that when you're then using tooling to secure AI is finding the right results and getting to the most accurate decisions possible from a security perspective. And then finally, deploying AI-specific encryption and privacy techniques. We are already starting to see growth in the adoption of AI, not just in a human interacts with a single AI and then a human gets the output. We're already starting to see AIs, basically multiple AIs, multi-hop AIs in a process where one AI generates a piece of processing, a piece of data, puts it into another, does a generation and processing, puts it into another. So there could be several multi-hops of AI usage before a human either side is engaged. And that also can lead to a significant amounts of potential security risk. So it's good to see that leaders are understanding that there is a lot of soft elements to security and a lot of hard elements to security that need to be addressed in this space. So moving on. Oh, sorry, let me say the question first. Which type of AI system and capability poses the biggest security risk? So interestingly, if I start in, what we also reflected on the last slide, AI systems that lack explainability and auditability is seen as a high security risk issue, as not just, like I say, tooling protection. Also what we talked about, multi-component AI pipelines with a complex attack surfaces. They're already, the area of AI security is raising significantly week on week, month on month, but there's also a lot of unknowns as well, still yet to come, based on how people start to use this technology more in earnest across industries and across countries. Adversarial attacks on machine learning and deep learning flaws. And it should be pointed out here that most organizations, especially around deep learning, will use adversarial AI to actually train models. You can also bad actors are already starting to use adversarial AI on the outside of organizations, and obviously sometimes on the inside from the espionage perspective, starting to use adversarial AI itself to attack ML and DL models and their behaviors to try to usurp them and change their focus and change their outputs. Then another security risk is models producing harmful and biased content. That comes back to the responsible AI element as well, that security has a big position as a team and as a function in. And then finally, model decision-making without accountability. Very interesting that it's recognized that a lot of leaders on the business side, on the less technical side, are falling into the trap a little bit that we speak to, where they assume that AI is just, you just put some data in, you get some information out, the AI is all responsible, it's all well behaved. Well, that accountability part, I mean, with regards to who owns the outcome, who owns the input, who's responsible for all of this, is the integral part of an AI process for security. So going to the second from last slide now. So to what extent are organizations exploring the use of AI to enhance cybersecurity itself? So 13% of respondents said they were doing limited exploration of AI for cybersecurity so far. 25% said they're evaluating and exploring AI. 37% are in a piloting phase for the use of certain selected use cases, which I think we see quite a lot of at the moment as the vendors as well ramp up their security capabilities into their AI capabilities, into their security products. So that the piloting part is a significant movement right now for a lot of organizations across Europe. And then finally at 24%, actively organizations, 24% of organizations are already actively deploying AI for threat detection and response. This is going to evolve considerably over the coming years as agentic AI technology evolves, and where you've got essentially autonomous agents that are able to almost like a human-like role for a lot of threat detection behavior and managing perimeters. So we expect to see a lot of this to evolve and change over the next coming couple of years. And then my final slide, which is which type of AI system or capability poses the biggest security risk? So our respondents said at 16% that organization, interestingly, the culture issue here, organizational silos between AI security and ethics teams. Now, some people on this webinar might not have thought or heard about ethics teams. So as part of that responsible AI bias, transparency, privacy element, there is a growing demand for the capabilities of a role called an ethicist, who are experts in the field of ethics and be able to understand ethics between country borders and the regulatory impact around ethics. That's a separate skill and perspective from data scientists, and obviously from security personnel. So it's good to see respondents are understanding that building that closeness is essential. At 17%, respondents said the immaturity of tools and techniques for AI assurance, and that is the case at the moment. As I've already mentioned, all the big security software players are embedding varying forms of ever more sophisticated machine learning, deep learning capabilities into their solutions. But generally speaking, the market is still very immature, and also organizations' ability to adopt this technology is still quite sort of immature and growing. So there is a lot of learning and a lot of support can be needed from service providers and other organizations to help. And then finally, jointly at 26%, we have data quality issues impacting AI systems robustness, and given the pivotal role of data obviously in AI, without it, AI serves no purpose. The security element of that is a big challenge for a lot of organizations still. And I think importantly here, as you can see also at 26%, a lack of skills and expertise in AI security specifically is the biggest security risk. And this is where we continue to see, like with a lot of other skills gaps, enterprises, particularly in Europe, relying on service providers or seeking service providers who have this capability to be able to support them. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Joshua, and now we're over to our Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Spencer. We already have a few questions. If you want to submit your questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom. Our first question is regarding NIS2. Is NIS2 fully implemented in Europe now, and what are the effects?
The answer is no. We're looking closely at as you know, NIS2 is calling for local regulation for transposition. I think nine, maybe 10 countries have already, out of the 27s, have already made a transposition, which are small countries. No offense to Belgium and Romania. They are small countries where we very closely look at what they're doing regarding the SME catch-up. The main three countries in Europe, including UK, as you may remember, UK was part of Europe when NIS1 applied, and UK intends to move to a new framework close to NIS2. So UK is in the move of changing regulation. They're not ready. Germany has just not yet established a new government. I think it's ongoing. So the French are the most advanced with the debate. However, there is what we call the Directive Rex that makes it, for some verticals, the obligation to use NIS2. So you cannot ignore NIS2. That's the answer. NIS2 is coming. You cannot ignore it. You must be prepared for it. Most of the major organizations are ready for NIS2 because they have plans for compliance. So even if technically the rule is not passed everywhere, in fact, the impact on the market is already existing.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Another question. How can organizations balance the benefits of AI-powered security with the need for human oversight in decision-making and threat mitigation?
I suppose that would be me to take that one. So thank you, Joshua. I mean, honestly, the way that I think organizations that service providers engage with, they need to look at, organizations need to look at it as a triage mechanism. So pretty much every organization that I speak with and we speak with collectively are often overwhelmed with the amount of security data and security protocols they have to administer, they have to operate. It's going to escalate more and more to do with AI. So, AI as a set of tools is great for that triage mechanism. There's not a case of it replacing humans. It's more a case of, can it go out, diagnose, identify and diagnose a series of issues? As I talked about earlier, the potential growth of once agentic AI really becomes more mainstream, using agentic AI as autonomous AI agents to manage perimeter and to report back, and then allow the human in the loop and to make the decision about, is this a false positive? Is this correct? How do I need to make a decision from there? Because obviously, especially with regards to security issues around data and all the consequences to do with that, and the stuff that Eric's been talking about as well today, we obviously still need a human legally in the loop to make that final decision. So think of it more as a means as a tool to help with the overwhelming amount of issues and challenges that most organizations have to deal with, rather than something that is overtaking jobs.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Another question, why is integrating cyber resilience into broader business resilience strategies critical for managing crisis?
Well, that's basically, let's put it that way. Cyber resilience is part of enterprise resilience, and it should be handled like that. And that's basically needed in order to make sure that you really can guarantee, or at least aim for, the fact that a company can work without or even during a cyber incident. So if you don't have the link between cyber IT and the rest of the operations, it doesn't work. So you have to align the strategy, you have to align the technology behind, and then you have a chance to come through a crisis. And the second, not to neglect portion, is basically you get much easier budget for the whole operations if you do it in an enterprise perspective than if you just talk about cyber resilience.
Okay, we have another question. Is NIS2 ready to be implemented or very far from current security architecture at customers? If the gap is heavy, where would customers start first to reach closer to compliance?
So first of all, NIS2 transpositions may create some slight differences between countries, like on the topic of local governments and local communities being involved or not. So many differences in between countries. Second element, NIS2 is not a technical architecture, as you know. It's a compliance architecture. And what we've seen by the past regarding the massive compliance architecture, it's progressive. The adoption of GDPR has not been made overnight, and the regulators have not started to punish overnight. So there's the big companies which are already ISO 27X something, which are almost NIS2 ready, which will be easy to tick the box for NIS2 compliance. For the SMEs, we guess that the regulators, the local regulators, will be more on the pedagogic side at the very early beginning, and then move to within 3 years, as the French regulators said, will give 3 years for organizations to smoothly move from a do-it-yourself security model to an NIS2 compliance model. So progressivity, progressions, again, where is the cash? Where is the money? Public funding somewhere. So I hope it answers the questions.
Okay. And how can AI-driven automation improve incident response times, and what safeguards should be in place to prevent false positives and negatives?
I think I probably stepped on my feet a little bit with that one, because I answered a little bit of that in the last question. So look, I would say with regards to the false positive and negatives, that at this point in time, you're not going to be able to prevent that with AI. To be fair, you can't prevent that now. Most organizations dealing with any kind of risk and fraud detection, any kind of security issues, you'll always get some element of that. I think what's important, as we've talked about in the previous slides and what the respondents said, is ensuring that you've got the right structure, responsible AI structure in place, the right governance model in place. You're always going to have a range of dashboards, where a human makes a final decision. And you're also going to have to accept that these models take, much like Eric talked about with correctly talked about with GDPR and AS2, these models will take years of iteration, time of iteration. They're not going to be perfect out of the box. They are going to have potentially miss things or need refinement or need greater learning. And so, it's about that type of thing. So it's a combination of the data scientists, ethics and security teams to refine the models and then ensure there's always somebody on the back end just making that final decision.
We have another question. What is the planned percentage of growth for consulting services for large companies across UK, France, and German markets? Is the dynamic the same for the three countries, or is there a significant difference?
There are some differences for sure. If you go for the market figures we just showed, it's more or less hidden in the GRC figures, so that's a good hint for consulting in total. Maybe a little bit smaller because the SOC services are assimilated there as well, but it's a good figure to start with.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it for today. We will send you the slides. That was a question as well. So if you have a look at the slides after the webinar and any more questions arise, please do not hesitate to contact us. That we will be able to answer your questions as well. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention and have a good day.